I am super excited today to be here with Jessi Raulet, the artist behind the brand EttaVee. You can find her art licensed on so many incredible products, from planners to Pottery Barn bedding. And she also sells her original paintings, and she's represented by the Liz Legit Gallery. So I was so excited to have Jessi finally join me today. Welcome, Jessi.
Thank you so much for having me, Elizabeth. I just remember meeting you. I remember meeting you at my very first Surtex back in like 2018, I believe.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And I had just signed with Jewel, and I remember you came by the booth and you were just so lovely, and finding your YouTube channel, and just, it's so wonderful. All of this information that you're sharing with artists.
Oh, thank you.
These conversations.
Yes.
Yeah, they're so important.
Yeah, I remember meeting you too, and I was like, oh, I love your, you know, you have such a colorful vibe, and with your paintings and everything. So I was really excited when you signed on with Jewel. So I was like, okay, well, now I'm going to stalk you because you're in my, you have my agent too.
Exactly.
So, so for people who aren't totally familiar, can you give us sort of like a brief overview of how you got started as an artist?
Yeah. So I've been making art my whole life. And whenever, you know, growing up, I kind of dabbled, you know, in painting, photography, illustration. I was like, ooh, I'm going to work at like a fashion magazine one day. Like that was kind of like my dream. And I went to school for advertising and specialized in art direction. So I moved to San Francisco, worked as an art director in an advertising agency, and something that I, you know, all while doing this, I was painting on the side, of course, as a hobby for fun. But something that I started to notice in all of my projects was that I had a grand theme of color. And so like, no matter what client I was working on, I noticed I was able to put colors together in a really interesting way. And, you know, to not like make the story so long, but EttaVee, the way that it actually started is while I was working as an art director. I was in front of the computer all the time and just really felt the need to make something with my hands again. And so I started making jewelry and selling it on Etsy. And so that's how I got my start on selling on Etsy for the first time. I was also selling in a couple of stores in San Francisco, and moved to Paris shortly after opening my shop. And once I moved there, it was in the middle of the winter. It was gray outside. I was like, my eyes hurt. I need some color. Like I need some color. And so I hit up the art store, got, you know, the brightest colors I could, and just started painting, you know, for just pieces to brighten up my space. And since I already had the EttaVee name from my previous, well, before I get there, I started kind of sharing the artwork online, and people were like, oh, that's really cool. Like I would love some as well. So then I started throwing it on Etsy, and that's how people started to find me. And of course, with the invention of like Instagram, that, you know, just being able to kind of share every day, share my process of what it's like to just kind of like be living in France. Like I didn't really have the goal of making it like a big global brand, but I was just kind of sharing. Oops. No, but I was just kind of like sharing my joy of color and like my joy of like making art. And I think people really resonated with that. And so, yeah, I
can relate to that color, you know, that need for color so much. There's been so many times, I'm such a, of course, a visual person as well. And there's been so many times where I've just found myself like painting a wall because I just have to have something more. Like it's gray out and I'm tired of it, you know? So I get it.
Exactly. And I think a lot of what art is, and like the creation of art, it's like what we're lacking. And so, you know, it was winter. It was gray. It's Paris. It's very beige. The buildings are beige. I was like, help me, somebody help me. And so, you know, you kind of create what you're lacking.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. And that's what I love about Surface Pattern, is because it gives you, or, you know, any kind of art for product is great because it just gives, you know, it just cheers up every everyday item, you know?
Exactly.
I love that.
I love that too. Yeah.
Cool. So it was already basically sounds like it was starting to grow. When you were still working as an art director, you had a brand on Etsy, with some of your artwork. Were you at a point where you were like really kind of struggling or were you really balancing, or was it just like a little bit on Etsy and you still were, like, where were you as far as balancing the two when you were still working as an art director?
Yeah. So when I did move to Paris, I did end up getting a job as an art director there as well, because I had a wedding to pay for. So I was like, okay, let me go back to work. And so how I was kind of balancing that is in the evenings when I would come home, I would design pieces. So a lot of how my initial Etsy store was set up, it was like fine art, but then also art prints. And so I, am very familiar with Photoshop and also a graphic designer. So I was designing some like fun, just like art prints for people to hang in their homes as well. So that's what I would do on the evenings when I would come home, and then I would go to work the next morning. And in between, during my lunch break, I would sneak out and go to the post office and ship any kind of orders that I had. And it's funny because the French, they like don't understand that. They were like, why aren't you sitting down and like eating with us? And I was just like, I'm sorry, I'm running another business. And they were like, girl, you're crazy. But
that is uniquely American, right? The nonstop hustle.
Exactly. They were like, sit down, please. I'm just like, I gotta make it work. And so that's kind of what I would do. And then on the weekends as well, I would pack orders. And
so you were really hustling. Did you have any, would you have any advice now looking back to yourself, as you were trying to kind of build two things maintain one thing and build another thing?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think for me, where I would have the most advice for myself would come into the point where it's time to like figure out how to leave the job and go into, I think that's like the hardest part.
Transition. Yeah.
The transition. And you have to like get yourself ready for that transition. And so one of the ways that I did like save money, I was like saving money for that transition, but like maybe not enough money. And so I would say to really like make sure that you're able to start, pulling aside some money for the transition, but to grow it in order to have that money, to be confident enough to make that jump. I would say like, let go of things that are not working. So if you're finding that like in your business, like, okay, like I'm kind of selling some of this over here and some of this over here, and I really love this. It's not selling, but I really, really love this. Cut it. Like, because in the end, it has to be profitable. And so, and then you can always revisit that later on. Yeah. But I think the most important thing is finding a way to like stabilize your business the most that you can, while, you have this other support. So it is finding the things that are working. A lot of it is slinging mud and finding what sticks. And so really just keep trying things until you find one thing that takes off enough for you to sustain yourself up out of that job.
Yeah, I love that. That's great advice. I think it is, it's really difficult to make that transition. And for me, I didn't really make the transition. I just sort of jumped into freelancing because we wanted to move. And I was like, oh, this won't be too hard. I had a little money saved. And luckily, I mean, I did have my partner could support, we weren't gonna I wasn't gonna be homeless if I didn't make it work, but
right.
I definitely wanted to make it work. I wasn't like trying, I was like hustling to like really make it work, but it took longer than I expected. And yeah, I think the thing that people run into a lot is that when it takes longer than expected in one avenue, they start trying to do 6 avenues, which was me too. I 100% did that, but that makes that original avenue isn't going to go anywhere when you're doing 7 other things, right? So
exactly,
it's like hard to focus when things aren't working out immediately, but unfortunately you have to put the work into the things, right?
Exactly, you have to put the work in, you have to stay the course. But then it's true, it's also kind of like, well, it's funny because it's kind of, it's like a contradiction in a way. It's like it's like you have to stay with it to make it work, but also sometimes like it's not working.
Kind of know when to cut it, and you don't know.
Yeah,
I totally understand.
Yeah, it's like really a weird contradiction.
I have a hard time kind of explaining that to people too, but it's true. And and unfortunately you kind of just have to learn it by doing, right? Like there's no way, there's only so much advice that people who have been there can give, exactly. But it's like at the end of the day, you have to kind of find your own path and stumble around a little bit, which is a bummer. Exactly.
But that's how it is. Such is life.
Yeah. So talk to me about how did you realize that art licensing was going to be a good route for you? So now going back to you having moved to France, and you were starting to show things on Instagram, and you had prints on your Etsy store, and then kind of how did that evolve?
Yeah. So it's funny, whenever I was, whenever I was an art director in San Francisco, I would like wander into Target. Who doesn't love Target? And growing up, I was always in Target in like the Lisa Frank section. Growing up, I was like, ooh, So I, love the paper section. And so something that I would notice is that I would always gravitate towards like the paper section, or even like design collaborations that were going on. So, like Joy Cho, Justina Blackney, honestly, to me, as I was just like, wait, you can be a designer, there were bloggers, but then also designers. And I was just like, wait, my mind is blown. Like, this is so cool. Like, I would love, how can I do this too? Right. And so I think that that's kind of like how the idea was implanted. It was by seeing other inspirational designers doing it as well. And once I had started just like creating the art, especially like the really colorful art, I noticed that it just wasn't really out there. Like I didn't really see it existing in that sense in the world. And so I feel like it's just the artwork itself, it's so colorful, bright, vibrant, positive, that it lends itself really well to everyday objects. And so and I just like look around my desk, and I have like the phone case, like just sitting here, but it's like, it's pretty and it's happy. And I'm just like, ooh, I love the idea of someone having like a coffee mug, and they look over and it just like brings a little smile to their face because of the bright colors. And so I thought the art itself just like, really lends itself well.
Yeah, it definitely does. There's no question about that. I think that, we grow up with products all around us that have art on it, but there's always that moment that you were like, wait a second, that's somebody's job. Like, hold
exactly. Exactly.
So it's funny because you just get desensitized to it. Just like, you're like, oh, this is cool, this is pretty, but like, you don't necessarily, it takes a while to make that connection that someone's actually doing it,
Exactly. It's like, wait, because it's like, it's not like it just magically appears, even if it isn't like a designer like Joy Cho, it's like there is somebody working,
behind the scenes
for any company designing anything that exists. And so I was like, wow, it really is like a light bulb moment.
Yeah, I love Joy Cho. She was actually, when I first started freelancing in like 2012, she still is amazing, but she was very popular. And I had like a consultation, or like I did some like,
nice.
Did some coaching with her for a few sessions, which was
That's
wonderful.
fantastic.
So it was good to sort of understand her process a little bit and learn a little bit from her. So she's amazing.
The dream. What a dream. I love that.
So I love trends, and, certainly with product, keeping up with trends can be really important with art licensing. But as you've shown through your success, you have a very distinct creative voice and vision that is aside from whatever's happening kind of in the market. And you stand out for that reason. What kind of helps you keep the balance between trending themes and doing your own thing? Or do you maybe you don't pay any attention to trends? Tell me kind of where you stand on that.
Yeah, I absolutely I'm aware of the trends. I pay attention to the trends, and through our agency, we're kind of kept up to date on. We have the information, and so what I do is whenever like new trends come in, I'll kind of like take a little look through and see like what naturally I'm drawn to, or what I think could be playful for my brand, or could easily coincide with my brand. Like if someone's looking for like Easter bunnies in a basket, I'm like, that's not me. I mean, it could be me. Like, I mean, I could try,
possible, but it wouldn't.
Exactly. And so I'm always just trying to look to see like what makes the most sense, and try to find playful ways to bring brushstrokes into trends. A good example would be like lately, I think there's like the checker trend going on, checker print. And so I have something somewhere around here. Oh yeah, oh my gosh, I have this stack of phone cases because I'm doing photo shoots. So I like put my art.
Oh, I love that.
I did it, you see? And so it was like, okay, I'm going to do a checker trend, but I want to like find a way to make it mine. And so, just kind of switching it up, but still staying within the trend a little bit. And
I love that. So balancing it for sure. And I think that's good advice for anyone. Like for me, I'm not I don't have a really set style, like because I came from working in-house, I was used to doing a lot of styles, and I still love to do a lot of styles. I mean, there is some through line between what I like to do best, but I have a hard time sticking with like one really overarching style. So it's easy for me to get swayed by trends, but still I like, I keep up with them, but I don't jump into them really quickly. I will say I'm still kind of slow to adapt them in my own artwork. I will say I'm just doing, yesterday I got like inspired and I was doing like a mushroom and wildflower print, and it's like I love it, but I'm also like, I knew about mushrooms and wildflowers like 2 years ago. There's no reason for me to have waited until now.
Exactly.
But here I am, like whatever.
You got there eventually, and like when you said that, I'm like, oh, you could like that totally makes sense, like for you to be doing mushrooms and wildflowers.
But like I said, I've been knowing about this for 2-3 years. I could have done this. I could have been way ahead of the curve, but no. I was sometimes like, just do what we can do.
All in due time. Yeah. Absolutely.
So along that same line, this, a lot of the art licensing industry is really representational, right? So Santa's, mushrooms, flowers, all those things. And your work is primarily abstract. And I will say, Jessi, this has made it very difficult for me because people always ask me if you need to be able to draw to be an art licensing star, and you can draw. I'm sure you can. That's absolutely no insult. However, when we look at your art, it's abstract. There's not a lot of, things, drawing representational. So I always want to say, yes, you need to know how to draw. And then I'm like, well, unless you're one special, wonderful, colorful person named Jessi.
I do know how to draw. I'm an art minor.
You went to, to be an art director. And
but I hear you.
That's no disrespect. It's just that.
No, I hear you.
It is different. So have you found any resistance on that front from manufacturers because they maybe aren't totally sure what to do with the abstract, the thing that you are so good at?
Yeah, I think that like in terms of like whenever you're putting an abstract onto product, and maybe it's the first time this company is doing something like that before, they like don't really know how to see it. And I think their first inclination is just to slap it on there, like just to like, here's a plate, let's just like put the whole abstract on there. And I'm like, okay, like let's be a little thoughtful about the design. But I think that's when mock-ups come into play, is like people aren't going to know what to do unless you like show them. And so if you show them all the different ways that you can use abstract, I'm like, okay, you don't have to put it on the whole plate, but you can like maybe put the brush strokes dripping into the plate, or you can like put a border, like a really colorful border around it, just different ways of going about it.
For sure. And that's that art director brain, and that's that art background, so it's not just, representational drawing, but the understandings that you have about,
design.
about design in general. Exactly.
Oh yeah,
So
I
we
actually
remember that. So when people say, do I need to know how to draw? I'm like, you probably do, but you definitely need to know design principles.
No, design. I would say, do you need to know how to draw? No. I mean, it depends what you're doing. What are you doing? Like, what's your style? What are you doing? I would say you need to know Photoshop. I would say you need to know Illustrator, just like to be able to put ideas together, to put your ideas together to sell them to the world. And then their designers can handle all the production, but like just enough to be able to even just like simply sketch, just get your idea across is like,
being able to translate that. Yeah, you're right. That's an important part. I love that.
Yeah.
But
and I have a second part to your question is lettering, adding lettering. That absolutely, like if someone is like, oh, like we see, like this has happened a couple of times, they're like, oh, we see that you have this like red and green holiday colory looking brushstroke pattern, and we would love to, put it on a like Christmas card, or I don't know. And so they were like, can you just like add some lettering to it? And so then I'll just like add lettering to it, and then it makes it work for their product. But I think
lettering is still so important. I think I've been doing more and more lettering. It's like getting your ideas across by writing it. Basically, it's like seems like it's and it's I'm not a expert letterer, but I mean I've been getting into it and more interested in it myself. But yeah, it just makes it easier to kind of like putting a little word or something on a notebook, changing it from being all brush strokes to dreams or whatever, notes or whatever it is. Right. Just like that goes with the art rather than necessarily just like typed out.
It gives it like added context and it also happens often, like if they come across something, like I said with the holiday, but if they're looking for something for summer and they see something that's like summery colored, and they're just like, okay, like add a fun in the sun or whatever. And so it's cool. That can kind of give people ideas.
I will say one note on lettering though is if you're not a good letterer, dear audience, if lettering isn't your strong set, and it is a really difficult skill set, if it looks super, super, super amateur, it's better to stick with fonts, and it's okay to stick with fonts. That is something that either if you get it licensed or whatever, they can deal with it, or they can put in their own, whatever. That's a problem for another day. But you can use fonts, and don't use the basic whatever Microsoft is giving you. You need to go and find out what's trending in fonts. You need to go on Creative Market. You need to go on like defont.com has like free ones, but you need to be looking at what's trending in fonts, because that can ruin something so quick. If it's beautiful art and has really bad hand lettering, or if it has really, really basic fonts, that's like amateur hour.
For me, it's the fonts. Whenever I was thinking of basic fonts, I think I just had like a reaction. I was like, woo! Like, I hear you. It's
right. Papyrus. Don't give me papyrus. You are on the wrong track.
Right.
No, I have a video that's I did it a couple of years ago, which is like 5 like kind of amateur, like what's amateur for surface pattern, and one of them is like using basic fonts, and it's like it takes some learning. Like it really does. It's not it's hard to know what's trending in fonts. To me it's easy, but that's because I'm experienced. If you're new to it, it can be hard to make those good combinations and stuff like that, but you have to kind of be looking at references of what's happening with greeting cards or with notebooks or whatever you're aiming for, to see, does what I'm doing, because the artwork can be so beautiful and the font will take it down in 1 second. So all right, good. So that's my little lecture for the day for anyone.
No, but it's so true. And to add to that, I think, because I'm not a trained letterer, I've never taken like a lettering class or course or anything. It's everything that I do is just like my handwriting, just like zhuzhed up a bit. But I remember I had a licensee over here in France, and it involved a lot of lettering for some like cute little cards. And so I was doing all this lettering. And then he was like, you know what, like the guy who's like, maybe you should just stick to painting. And I was just like, okay, I don't want to offend the French people viewing. I'm so sorry for that. But yeah, he was like, maybe you should just stick to painting. And I was like, rude, like, absolutely not. Because I think that like, we shouldn't like let people tell us who we are.
True.
Does that make sense? Because honestly, a month later, I had a whole slew of notebooks with my lettering on it come out in Target the next month with my lettering on it. And so if you let, I would just say, like, if you're lettering, it might not be someone's cup of tea, but if it's yours and it feels authentic, like, just keep elevating it, keep working at it to make it as best as you can.
That's a good point too. I love that. Yeah. Cause it's subjective at the end of the day. Some people's lettering, styles are not my particular cup of tea, but that doesn't mean they're not cool. And my own lettering style is never going to be like the, beautiful lettered, like perfection that we see on Instagram, but it's quirky and it's fine and whatever. And then I look back at my older pieces. In fact, I have one that's still in Party. I think it's still in Party City now. It's not licensed. It was a freelance one, but I hand lettered it. I think they made a little bit of adjustments when later on, but still it's in there. And I'm like, oh my God, that's not the great.
Oh no, but I've
gotten better since then.
You've gotten better, right?
Whatever. But so yes, but that is a great point though. It is still subjective at the end of the day. So here I am being like, if it's crap, then but
No, but you did make a really good point about fonts. So let's not forget that.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I love it. All right. So I don't sell any original artwork like you do. But I think sort of any working artist can relate to the idea of figuring out fair pricing for their art, whether it's original, whether it's their services as a freelancer, whether it's, whatever their like a buyout rate, if you're going to be selling your work outright. Can we talk a little bit about, pricing your artwork, how you've kind of come to the numbers that you've come to, advice for people when you were starting your Etsy shop, you had to price your work. Any advice to people who might be potentially undercharging, which is probably everyone.
Oh my goodness.
Because as I always say, this industry is filled with women and women are way too timid about their pricing. So, basically, any advice you can give us, we need.
Yes, no. And I think, what was it? Whenever I was starting out as a freelancer, like for art direction work, I had two really amazing women mentors at my agency in San Francisco. One was the creative director and one was the senior copywriter. And something that they instilled in me is like, you should be paid well for what you do. And never undersell yourself, never undercharge yourself, ask for like, even just like a little bit more than what you need. And so they instilled that at me and they were just like, never, and don't like drop your prices, like, no. And so I was like, okay. And I'm so grateful for just that permission is like, they gave me that like just little permission as a very young designer and I've definitely like have carried that throughout with me. So whenever it came to like pricing original artwork, I had no idea where to start because, you can do a quick Google search, but it's like
all over the map. Yeah.
All over the map. And there's so many things that go into it. Like, how renowned is this artist or whatever. And so I did land on a very simple like math equation starting out. So it's pretty much you take the width of your canvas time, like it's the dimensions. So it's the width times the height, multiply that by a monetary amount per square inch. So like, let's say that your piece is like 20 by 20 inches. So it's 20 times 20 times, and then let's say $1 per square inch. So that would be $400. That math right? I don't want to embarrass myself.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Don't want to embarrass myself on YouTube. Okay. So yes, 20. So yeah, 20 times 20 times 1 would be like 400. So then your piece would, you could sell it for $400. And my recommendation is that you start to raise that price every year. So you would raise the dollar amount
to be
yes.
$1.50, $2, whatever. Yeah.
Exactly. So like, let's say the next year you bump it up to 2. So then you have like 20 times 20 times 2, and then you have $800 piece. It's the exact same piece. You put the exact same amount of work into it, but your artwork appreciated. And it's very important that your original artwork appreciates every year. You want it to appreciate in value. So
not just your original artwork, but your anything.
Yes,
that is
anything.
Such an excellent point, and that's something that I'm always trying to drive home to. You need to be raising your prices like yearly, every year and a half, whatever, because that's the thing. We start low, and I always am okay. Like I give people permission to start low because I understand what it was like when you were starting out, and you're like, I just want to make this sale or make this job or whatever. If you need to start low to get that confidence, do it, but don't stay low. Don't think the only reason you're succeeding is because you started low. Like you have to keep moving up. So.
But that's a great point that you made, just, to build the confidence, because I think that's important too. You have to build your confidence little by little. And the more that it builds up, like, then you will have that confidence to ask for
as
more.
you see that people will pay the next level and the next level. And, and that goes for estimating, job, like freelance jobs or whatever, commissions, whatever, estimating how much time is going to go into a certain project and all that.
Absolutely.
I have a kind of a follow-up question on that one, because a lot of people ask me about, my licensing rates, or like, my earnings from licensing. And the question that I kind of have for you is, this might not, because where I am in licensing is very different from where you are in licensing. And I'm, I don't make a lot of my money from licensing, and I'm not like, a brand name in the way that you are. So I feel like, we both have the same agent, but, I feel like I am sort of given what my prices are for license, as far as like, percentages and royalties. It's like, this is what they're offering. This is what it is. And I don't feel like I have a lot of leverage, even when I've asked, Jewel to say like, oh, is that good? And I don't always know, so I'm not like, I'm trying to negotiate every deal or whatever, but I feel like I don't have a lot of leverage. But I'm wondering, you maybe do have a lot of leverage, well, my question, I guess, is, do you feel like your licensing, like royalty rate or whatever is kind of what it is, or do you get an opportunity to negotiate in many cases?
If I feel that something in a contract could be bumped up, I'm always going to ask, or like, hands down, I will always ask. And I don't know, I think it's also just like the way that I've like was taught to negotiate. It's
meant to be a negotiation, right?
It's meant to be a negotiation. Exactly. Like it's kind of all on the table. And, if I ask for more, if I just think it just needs to be higher, and like, it's not, I can always, I can say no, or I can accept it, but I think it's always okay to ask. Like, I really be asking.
Think that's amazing. I agree with that. I agree with that for sure. I think, I just sometimes feel a little disempowered as someone who has an agent, because they sort of remind you, they're like, of course, we want you to have as much as you can. They are negotiating for you. And I'm like, but I don't see that. Like, I don't know how much you've argued for me. So I'm still looking at it and saying, all right, well, this is what it is. Don't you think it could go more? I think that, again, not being having the same position of leverage that you probably do with your like many collaborations. I feel like with like the lower level deals, that sort of, I'm like a greeting card here and there kind of thing, versus like a big overall umbrella kind of deal. I feel like it's like, well, it kind of is what it is. And do you really want me to go hard on this 5% for like what's going to be like a $600 thing? You know what I mean? So,
right.
So I think that's where I'm at on that.
I think you definitely have to like pick and choose your battles. Like sometimes I'm not going to like go all hard for like everything. It's just only in the times where I feel like, can we just like zhuzh this up a bit? But I do understand what you're saying about leverage. Because I do try to use that as well. I'm like, well, like you can tell them that I will help market the product. I will help, I'm going to help like do what I can to like make sure it's a success. And I feel, and especially if I'm going to be asked to create content and like market it, like I think that I should, you know,
for sure. Yeah, you should. You 100% should. Yeah. No, I love that. I love that. No, that's wonderful to know, because I think that's how it should be. But sometimes, you know, I can only speak to my own experience. So that's why I love doing these interviews, because I get to get a little bit more nitty gritty with people who have seen it from a different angle that I haven't had that opportunity to see it from. So, I mean, I have the same kind of thoughts for like freelancing, when people are like, how could I raise my prices? And I'm like, well, I've been raising my prices. You can raise your prices. It's just, you know, it's it is a little bit of a leverage and an understanding of the industry and whatever it is. So
absolutely.
That's so interesting. I love that.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Thank you for illuminating that portion for me. Let's see here. We have a few more questions, but I want to make sure we have time for everything. So let's see. All right, let's go with this one. You do all the things like, you know, as we just talked about, original art, licensing, you have these big brand collaborations, you know, you work with Target and Pottery Barn and some amazing licensing brands, and plus you do workshops. We're going to be talking about some exciting things coming down the pipeline for you in a few minutes. Plus you have 2 kids under 5. So
I'm exhausted.
Everything
you just said, I'm exhausted.
Reporting, you've got a teething baby. So God help you. How do you know, as artists, we dream of this day when our brands become this, you know, like, of course, I look up to the success that you've had and the leverage that you had, as I just mentioned. I hope to get there someday. But,
you will. You are. I mean, girl,
you know,
you've been in
like
the game.
Yes. The things that we look to, then we get them, and then it's work. So my question is, how do you stay balanced with, as your brand is expanding so rapidly, you know, or do you just not stay balanced and it just
I mean, all of that made me feel absolutely exhausted whenever you were listing off all the things. And then the kids, I was like, I'm tired.
I know.
First, understanding what your limit is. So setting those boundaries, got to set those boundaries. I definitely had a moment where I completely burned out. I think it was summer 2020. Yes. In the middle of the pandemic.
Yeah, that would be a good time to burn out. We're all pretty burnt out right
now. Yeah. And I had just gotten that lovely deal, and I was like, I need to make it work. Like, I will stay up however late I need to. I will like be available whenever, like on vacation, whatever. Like, I burned out. I completely burned out. And so I was like, you know what? Like, from now on, I need to set very, very, very strict boundaries. And I have not broken them since. I mean, I'll break them like every now and like once every 3 months or something if I need to like work late or something. But honestly, it has changed my life.
It
has changed my life. And honestly, now it's like, if a project comes and it's like, hey, like, would you like to do this project? And if I don't feel like this flutter of absolute excitement, I'm saying no for now. I'm just like, no, like, I'll revisit that at another time, because I can't, you know, you can't pour from an empty cup. You need that rest. Yeah. And so I would say definitely that has absolutely changed my life. I sleep at night. Revolutionary, right? No. So that definitely boundaries. And then I would say bringing on help. That's a way to be able to do maybe not all the things, but many things. Yeah. And so like and I can understand maybe some artists, it's like, oh, like the control, wanting to have the control on all the things, or maybe even like monetarily also, like, oh, like if I pay someone, then I'm going to be earning less. Like, I can understand that as well. But honestly, when you hire out, you make more money. So that is,
oh my God, let's talk forever.
Right. And so then for me, for example, like licensing, you know, I was going to like try to do licensing by myself. Like, I was at Surtex, and then, you know, ended up going with Jewel, and I'm so happy I did, because their only job is to find licensing deals. Like, and I don't have to go on the hunt. Like, I can do things to help that, but I don't have to use my time to hunt for that.
Yeah.
Working with the gallery, I'm able to paint now more leisurely, send it to them, and then they sell it for me. But before, I was like painting and like photographing it, putting it online, and then going to the post office. It's like too much. It's too much. And so I think it's finding like where your limits are and finding ways to like hire it out. And I've just hired a lovely marketing, a girl who does content marketing. And so
awesome.
I'm just
excited
adding. Yeah.
Yes.
So I think that's the answer.
I so agree with both of those points. Yes, your favorite internet stars are not doing it by themselves. You know what I mean? No one is.
Nope.
I'm not even that successful, and I have plenty of help.
No, you are.
So, you know, it's like, you can't do it all. And that is what, so the pandemic taught me that so hard, you know, it's like, if one day everything changes and your two children are at home and don't have daycare, and suddenly you have 1 hour a day to like get anything done. And
oh my gosh,
you know, like I did the same. I mean, you know, at the beginning, I always talk about this, but at the beginning, you know, my kids were home for like 6 months. And so my husband was home too, but we were both working full-time jobs, but he has like a corporate job where he was in meetings all the time. So I was like the more available one. Yeah. And so then I was working at nap, doing my real job, like my art job at nap time and after bedtime. And that was miserable. So,
oh my God,
you know, you can do that for a couple months, but you can't do that for 6 months.
It's not sustainable.
Yeah. So getting that help in place, you know, was so worth it for me for 2021. And I just released like my 2021 sort of like pie chart of income and information about my income and stuff like that. And one thing I said is my expenses were so much more in 2021 than they've ever been in my business. But that's because I'm paying people to, you know, do a lot of the admin stuff in my business and you know, do content stuff and that kind of thing. And it's worth it. Like I brought in more money, but I technically took home less for myself or whatever because of expenses, a little bit less, but I worked so much less. Like, I'm not complaining. It's okay. It's okay.
Because it's like your brain has more space. It's like I don't even know like the phrase. There's like a phrase for it, but yes, like you have peace of mind, which is like worth everything. It's worth more than like that extra that you lost.
Your point about boundaries is super important too, because no one else is going to set boundaries for you. You have to do that. And as I also, the other thing I like to say, it's like, why would you want to work for yourself and not be the best boss that you've ever had? Right? What kind of boss would make you work every night for months on end? What kind of boss wouldn't let you go on vacation and you have to check your emails all the time? That's a boss.
I love that. I love that. I love that.
So you've got to be your own best boss. No one else is going to do it. So that really requires boundaries for sure. So I love
that.
That's something that you've come to. All right. We have a bonus question and we have some of the exciting things that are coming up. Do we want to talk about let's talk about what is coming down the pipeline for you first before we jump into our bonus question.
Yes.
Earlier about some new things. So tell me about them.
Yes. So pretty much the new things, they are born out of during the pandemic. I just really wanted to find a way to connect one-on-one with like my Instagram followers and just like anyone who just enjoys my art in general. And so I started putting on these virtual painting classes and they have just really taken off and it's so much fun. It's just very relaxed and it's a time when we can all get together and just create. And it's what's really cool is that there are people that tune in from all over the world. Like I think the last one that we had on Sunday, we had someone from like Finland, you know, all over the US, the UK, France, like India. It's just so fun. And so I don't know, I just really found that connecting with people over art one-on-one and seeing like the work that they produce afterwards, in like how they grew in confidence in how to paint with color or like using bright colors. And so, yeah, so teaching is kind of like my jam right now. And so I'm really excited to be releasing my very first class on Skillshare. And I have so many ideas of so many different classes to put out there. But what I love about Skillshare is that it's an affordable platform. Like you pay, like, what is it? Like $99, yes, $99 a month for sure. So affordable, and you can watch it as many times as you want. And so I'm really excited to get some very good classes out there. And in addition to that, I am going to be hosting my very first art retreat in the south of France, coming up very soon. And so we're still working out the details on that, but it's just going to be wonderful. It's going to be a time to there's going to be lots of downtime to relax, but like one-on-one time with me to hang out, talk art, ways that I can help you grow as an artist. And and so I'm working out details on that. But if you want to head over to my newsletter, if you sign up for my newsletter over at my website, EttaVee.com, you will be able to get information on that in the coming
information. Well, we'll definitely be putting all the links in the description to your website and how to follow you. And if we have the Skillshare link, we will put it in there. But either way, go to Skillshare, search Jessi. It should be, or EttaVee. It should be coming out around the same time as this video. So it might already be there waiting for you. So that is super exciting. I love that.
Thank you.
I know I always see your posts about, your workshops and stuff like that, and the things that you're going to, because you have like a little project each time of like what your little project's going to be. And it's so cool. I love the other thing. I mean, we barely scratched the surface on all the amazing things you do, but the glass painting that you do is so lovely. So I love those projects that you do where you paint on glass. I know you have I think you have a whole book on that. That's the other thing. She writes books, people. Come on.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on.
All right, well, now let's jump into the bonus question. So I always like to ask a bonus question that is for subscribers only. So if you're interested in the answer to this question after I ask it, head to the link down below for my newsletter, and you can watch this video behind the scenes. But my question is, we were talking about the transition from art direction into having your own thing, and how you were kind of balancing both of them. And how long did it take you to make a full-time income with your art? And also along with that, does the licensing portion of your income alone bring in a sustainable, I mean, obviously it's great to have multiple sources, but because you have so many great licensing partners, does licensing alone bring in enough that, you could consider it a full-time income? Head to the link in the description below to sign up for my Surface Pattern Boss Toolkit. And in that toolkit, besides all kinds of awesome resources, you'll find this bonus video with Jessi where she answers the questions about licensing and how long it took her to get a full-time incme. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. As you could tell, I could probably talk to you for another 6 years. But it was super fun. I'm going to put all your links in the description. And guys, go check out, if you don't know Jessi's work, go check out EttaVee. It's so colorful and wonderful. And all her collaborations, check out her website for sure, because it's so beautiful. So
thank you so much. Thank you for having me. This was fun. I always just love talking to you. You just bring out such interesting conversations and insights. And so I would love to do this again whenever. So thank you.
In the description of all my YouTube videos, I have a link to elizabethsilver.com/fresh, which will take you to sign up for my Surface Pattern Boss Toolkit. Once you sign up, you'll get an email to confirm, and then you'll get the password to get into this toolkit, where you can find all kinds of resources, Surface Pattern job guide, business advice, all kinds of trend reports, plus bonus videos, and access to the archives from my newsletters, where I have all kinds of cool links and useful creative business advice that you can check out. So I hope you go down to the link and join me. I'd love to have you. And while you're at it, hit subscribe and check out more videos on my channel.